my social media followers. It is me, Kiwani Murray, with my husband, Mr. Jeff Murray, and we're here today um, talking with you all about abuse, mental, emotional, and or physical abuse. Now, our little segment is a little late today. Please forgive us. We're having some technical difficulties, but we are here and we won't keep you very long. Okay. So, Mr. Murray, I wanted to, of course, I wanted to start off the conversation discussing the different types of abuse. And if you had to tell me or give me your definition of what you thought the different types of abuse were, mental, physical, emotional, what would you say that they were?
Well, they all tie together. Um, it's doing something against your own will, be it it's mental, if it's against my will when I'm forced to do something, if it's verbal, it's against my will to take certain language or certain actions. If it's physical, it's against my will to let people, persons hit on you, beat on you, spit on you. So it's things that are against your will um, or your desires for your life, for a better quality of life.
Okay. I would very much agree with that. I think that abuse is anything that causes you to do something you don't want to do, feel a way that you don't desire to feel, um, to accept something that is opposite of what you feel like you should be accepting. I think all of those are levels of abuse. There are lots of things that would qualify as abuse, and we could go on and on and on. The list would be endless to say or to give examples of things that are considered abuse. But have you ever yourself personally experienced any type of abuse, be it physical, mental, emotional? Have you had to deal with that?
I don't know if beatings from my mama will count. That was physical abuse with a belt, extension cord, anything she could hit to hit me with. I don't know if that would count.
Well, that would probably be considered abuse today with the rules they have today and the laws they have
They
today.
ain't have no rules then.
Right, right.
Mental abuse. Um, Sitting here having to do this at the last minute, I don't know if that count either. Um,
He always got to make a joke. He
um,
talking about a serious topic here, and he making jokes.
yeah, I was seriously ready to go and get a little rest and get ready for tomorrow. So, but I can't say. Um, but I think we all do because people, and I'm just gonna speak, general. People go to work doing jobs that they don't want to do in some cases, trying to make an honest living. Um, so they mentally have to fight with people, positions, work, decisions. I guess that's a form of mental abuse because you want the wages. In some cases, you feel like you're overworked and underpaid. You working with people that you don't feel like they appreciate you or value you or appreciate what you have to offer me. So we all we all do it. I'm a part of the greatest fraternity in America. Um, so it started back in Ithaca, New York in 1906. But when I pledged, and that was back in the day when pledging was really allowed, um, there was some form of mental abuse um, and some form of physical abuse. So throughout my short time here on earth, yeah, I've had to endure um, some type of abuse.
Okay, so what about, like, for me specifically, I have never, thank God, I've never had to deal with any physical abuse in terms of in a relationship or, yeah, I've had my share of fights. But in terms of abuse, no. Now, I do think that things, for example, I grew up in a home where I did see domestic violence. It was a lot of physical fighting amongst my parents in our home, and so just watching my mom go through a lot of that gave me the mindset that I'm never ever, because I saw the apologies and then the behavior stayed the same, and then it would happen again, and then there was another apology, but the behavior stayed the same. So I have witnessed physical abuse, but I believe that that takes a toll on you as a child to constantly see that behavior. It does become mental abuse at some point, because you're constantly in this environment that is breeding this aggression or this physical abuse, and then emotionally it becomes an issue because you're watching someone hurt that you love, and you're just a child, so you can't really do anything about it. So I believe in those aspects I suffered from what would be a mental and an emotional situation that caused me to feel like I was abused in that way. Aside from the fact that I had been violated as a child, that's just a whole nother conversation about abuse. But how it affected me as an adult, um, I became a stronger person because of it. And the one thing that I just would not tolerate as an adult is the physical abuse in a relationship per se. So, would you say that being brought up in a home where you were taught to not talk about what went on in your home, the whole cliche, what goes on in my home stays in my home, would you say that was a form of mental abuse for children to have to be reared in a home that that was the way that you were raised? Like, don't go telling our business, what goes on in our home stays in our home.
I would say I do believe in it, and I don't think that's necessarily abuse. That's called having structure and part of the organization of a home. Because what may go on in my house may not be abuse, but people outside the house will take stuff and try to use it against you and against the upbuilding of your family. Everybody's house is not the same. Everybody temperaments are not the same. And so, but before I keep going on with that, I think it's only abuse when you don't learn and develop some parameters. Then it becomes abuse. Abuse is when you keep going to something or somebody and pretty much using them, depleting them, raping them, and I don't mean physical rape, mental rape, emotional rape, financial rape, then therefore you begin to abuse the person, or in some cases you abuse the system. If something happens to you, you take a stance and you develop some barriers or boundaries, I wouldn't say that's abuse. I would say that's learning. Now, whatever happens in the home, yeah, I say it stays in the home, because I could, tell one of the kids, go sit down, and raise my voice and be upset and tell them to go sit down and stay in your room until I calm down. Some may say that's abuse because you're sending them to a form of confinement. I'm not confining you. I'm just trying to let me air out, let me calm down. So whatever it is, it can be dealt with.
Okay, but we're not talking about basic discipline or just creating structure, because that was the word you used, creating structure. But I'm talking about in the sense that, for example, if you witness something going on in your home, whether you're a child or an adult, you witness something going on in your home that you know should not be. You know that it is hurting someone physically, emotionally, mentally, is causing harm, but you're afraid to say anything that would get help for that person because you have been taught that what goes on in our home stays in our home. I see that as abuse in some way, because
I would say it's not abuse.
I but
I would
so
say
what would
the
you
reason
suggest
The reason I say that's not abuse is because, again, they could take something simple and blow it out of proportion. Say, you know, because what you consider hurtful to you may not be hurtful to me. It's just like text messaging. Texting is only in the eyes of the reader. The way you read it, it can be interpreted totally different.
I
So,
agree.
when I'm doing something, I could just tell Junior, I smack him on the hand and tell him, but what led up to me smacking him on the hand was he moved my keys. He knocked over a drink or he was playing in the garbage. He was doing something that he had no business doing. So, as a form of discipline, I just smacked him on the hand, told him, don't do that, go in your room.
But we're not talking about discipline. We're talking
But
about
I said that's what I
abuse.
would call it, discipline, and some would call it
Okay,
abuse.
let me give you
And
an
if he went
example
out and told
that you hit
him,
him, smack him.
but he's going to embellish it because now he's at the mercy of other people. Oh, my daddy slapped me, and I didn't even do nothing. And he pushed me and punched me, and so now it's making it look like I'm this monster. But no, I smacked his hand.
Okay, in that regard, then yes, I agree with you. But again, for example, if I see my mom being physically abused to the point where you have to put on shades to go to work to cover up black eyes, or you're calling in from work because your body is in pain from physically having to fight, and I know that that's hurting you, and I know that you want to get help, but you're afraid to get help. You're in a situation where you feel like you're stuck in a situation. I want to make a call and try to get help for my mom because I know she needs to get out of this situation. But I'm afraid to make the call because I've been told what goes on in our home stays in our home. Mentally, that is abuse to me because I see what is happening. I see how it is detrimental to our family. I see and can feel emotionally what it's doing to us, and I'm not able, I don't feel comfortable enough to tell somebody who could possibly help us get out of this situation. So you kind of live with that, and so much time goes by, and now mentally that's in your head that now you're an adult and you're afraid to step out and seek the help that you need because it's just been infused in your brain that what goes on in your home stays in your home. I think that's abusive to carry around
I wouldn't
that
say
type
that.
of.
I wouldn't say that's abusive. I would say that's a form of bullying
How is it bullying?
because you didn't at the onset. You let this person feel like they can be the dictator, so to speak, and since then they just kept it going and going. No one ever stood up and say, "Hold up, wait, stop. We ain't doing that. We got to set some order and boundaries." And they keep doing because what they're doing now, they're imposing their way. And I'm saying this, I don't want to say it from an ignorant standpoint. I'm just saying this because, you know, my brother and I, we didn't know what abuse was because, again, being raised by a single strong woman, my mama took the belt, whatever she got, to get us in order. But one thing she always taught us, it was he and I and we against the world. So when my stepfather moved in, and I think I shared this with you, and I don't know if he tried to hit my mama or swung at my mama. I can't remember exactly what it was, but my brother and I knew we ain't letting this happen. I don't care what nobody says, but we took matters in our hands as the young men of the house to be the protectors of the house. So we wasn't laying down to let nobody, you know, grown folks gonna have disagreements.
Right.
And we stayed out. But when we started hearing stuff rumble and bumble, oh no, we stepped in. We stepped in at all costs and didn't care. So that was just our brother and I. So I don't want to sound hard.
Okay, but let me ask you this. If there came a situation where you and your brother could not handle it, would you have felt comfortable going
In a
outside of
heartbeat.
your home to
In a heartbeat.
tell? Okay, so that's the difference.
Yeah, in a heartbeat.
So in that case, For you, you would not have felt abused because you felt comfortable enough to go outside and tell somebody, listen, we need somebody to come over
And
here
that
and get
outside
this
would have
straight.
been, and that outside would have been a couple of things. I can tell you, it would have been all my aunts, which would have been a riot, or it would have been the police.
Okay, but
And
think
again,
about the little person or the person who has been brainwashed to believe that they'll be in more trouble if they go outside and tell somebody. So they're not going to tell. And they'll
I,
just keep allowing this to happen. That's abuse.
and
That,
again,
mentally, that's abuse.
and I said that's bullying.
Emotionally,
If
that's
you
abuse.
if you look at bullying and abuse, they're almost twins. Because a bully just trying to enforce their will on the weaker person, so they think mental abuse. Somebody is forcing their will. They're getting in your head to change the way you think and see things. That's what a bully does.
Okay.
So I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying
But
it's wrong.
one is the giver
Right.
and the other is the receiver.
Right. We're still talking about two
So
people.
it's still abuse either way. It's still
I'm not.
abuse.
I'm not minimizing it. I'm just saying at some point in time, somewhere down that family's tree, nobody stood up to say these are the parameters.
Are you hearing me? When you're in a situation that is abusive
Like
and
you
you
trying to
and you
abuse
don't
me?
feel like you can step.
Right, and I said somewhere in that tree. I didn't say then. I'm saying somewhere. It could have been with the aunt. It could have been for the relations before. It could have been there. No one, even with the parent, no one stood up to say, "I'm not gonna let this guy, this girl or this person, push me past this limit."
Okay,
You
so
gotta
what
have
about when you're in a relationship? You're the person in the relationship, and the other party has become very manipulative, like you said. They're kind of forcing their will on you, and they're making you feel like they're verbally abusing you and beating you down, making you feel as if you will never have better, you don't deserve better. They have beaten your self-esteem down. That, God forbid, they're the breadwinner, they're the person paying the bills. So now they have this stronghold over you where they've made you feel like you wouldn't survive without them because you need their money, you need them to pay bills. And so they start to create an environment where you're not comfortable, you're feeling weak, you're feeling like and it doesn't have to necessarily be physical fighting or abuse, but the mental and the emotional strain on you to stay in that situation becomes overwhelming, and you are being abused, and you may not know how to get out. You may not know where to go to get out. What if there is nobody to save you? Your mom had you and your brother, but what if there is no one, it's just you and I here in this house. And if I were in that situation, there is no son to save me. So if I got to the point where I was feeling like that, and I was taking on all this abuse from you, mental abuse, emotional abuse, and I had no way of getting out or didn't know how to get out, and I'm scared to leave because financially I need you, then what is the recourse for that? Like, what would you tell a person who was looking for a way to get out of an abusive situation?
one. You should never be an island by yourself. And what I mean by that is, you always have that one or two persons that you can go to throughout life. You should always keep somebody. I got my partner James. If something going down, even though, and then I got my brother. My circle is a little bigger, but you should never feel like you're a hostage in your house or a hostage in your relationship. You should always have someone that's going to give you sound advice. Now, for somebody that's there now, and it could be very well there now, they got to do a couple of things. One, they got to learn how to pray hard. Pray hard and pray often. And then they got to want to grab their self-will to say, I deserve better. I don't care if you got one pair of shoes and you got a wig and you and it's raggedy. You got to encourage. The Bible talks about it. You got to encourage yourself. You got to see your own value. You may not look like much to some, but you're something to God. So you got to talk to yourself encourage yourself, motivate yourself, and then carry yourself in such a manner that, yeah, you may be the breadwinner, yeah, you may be providing everything, but I have to remember who's providing for you. And the same God that provides for you is the same God that's going to get me out of this mess and provide for me. And when it's all said and done, you're going to have to give an account to Him for how you handle who I am. You may not see no. I heard somebody said, one man's junk is another man's treasure. You may not see much of me. I may not look like much to you, but in God's eyesight, I am wonderfully built. I am a part of a royal priesthood. I am what He says I am. So you got to learn and grab and hold on to the Bible and prayer, and find you somebody that you can talk to that's going to, echo those same sentiments.
And that is all fine and good when you have reached that level, when you have grown your self-worth, when you have grown your self-love and your self-esteem. It sounds good, it's easy to say this is what should be done, but when a person has been beat down mentally and they just don't believe that, they don't believe that.
That's when they got to
But
fight like hell.
and I
They got to fight.
understand, I
Because
understand that.
you can't want more for a person than they want for themselves.
I agree.
And that's why they develop all these self-help groups, these phone numbers, what you can call for this number. But it starts with them. Something in them got to say, okay, I'm not going to do this no more. I'm not going to beat myself down. I ain't going to let nobody do this. And that's how most people end up snapping, because they done went to an extreme that they just can't take it no more. But before you get there, you have to. I can't help you if I don't know how to help you if you're not crying out for help.
I agree, and I do believe that every person has limit. I don't care what kind of situation it is. I don't care what type of abuse it is. I believe that everybody has limit. There's a line that at some point when it is crossed, the person is going to change their situation. They will, because it's only so much we can take, mentally, emotionally, physically. There's only so much we're going to take before we snap, like you said. So I do believe that everybody has limits. However, I also believe that the struggle is real. Some people really just don't know how, or they're not at the place where they understand their self-worth. Everybody, because you brought up the example that you have people to reach out to, everybody doesn't have that. One of the first signs of being in an abusive situation is the period of isolation. That's the first thing that an abuser does. They will isolate the person from everybody that they know cares about that person. So now, when you were used to talking to your family every day, the abuser is going to make it seem like all of your time and attention needs to be on that abuser, and so you'll start talking to family less. They may even say they want to move somewhere where they're moving you physically further away from the people who care about you. Sometimes there are flags that we have to look for in situations that are abusive, and that's one of them. When you start to feel isolated, when the person has you feeling like your world revolves around just them. So when you're in that situation, it's hard to pick up a phone and call somebody and say, I need help, or I need, I'm seeking wise counsel, or I'm in a bad situation. It's not as cut and dry for people who are actually in
I agree, but
the situation.
that's why I said they have to make a conscious decision. We can't do it for them. If we could do it for them, the world would be in a better, different place.
I agree.
But they have to want. They got to have the will and the desire to want to get out of this or get out of that or fix it. They got to be able to reach out to somebody, and we have to be there to have a listening ear, not a judgmental ear. And I think that's part of the problem. People start judging you, and so therefore they don't want to reach out, or they feel they can't reach out, or I don't want to bother you with my problems, or I don't want to burden you down with it. And you just got to have a discerning spirit, because some people do come with drama. They just want the attention and the pity. And some people out there, they really need that help. So they have to want to ask for help and receive the help and apply the help. But we have to be on the other end willing to Listen to them. Most of the times, people just need somebody to listen to them. Most conversations like 90% listening, 10% talking. You listen and let them get it off their chest, and if there's a way you can help, and that's why I tell people all the time, if I can help, I will help. But if I can't help, I'm not gonna mess it up. And I'm gonna tell you up on the front, I can't help you. I'm no brain surgeon. I can't give you a new brain. I can't. But if you want to talk about what's going on in your brain and how the doctor said you need a new brain, maybe I'll hook you up with somebody in the medical profession that can help you. But I'll listen to you. And that is my contribution to helping you by getting you with the doctor.
Okay. A lot of times a person is not actually aware that they're being abused. Sometimes you don't know even know you're being abused because you're in love. Like for let's in relationships, we're talking about relationships. Sometimes in relationships, you think you're in love. If you don't know any better, you think this is how love goes. And so by the time you figure out that you're being abused, you've been in it so long that it may be hard for you to even see it as abuse. So you're not going to be seeking help for something that you're not even aware of.
If it ain't broken, if they don't see it, sometimes we have to be careful to try to not bring it to them in such a judgmental way so they feel like you'll push them away. If you come to me and talk to, you know, Kiwani really abusing you because she won't let you come hang out with the fellas no more. We used to do this, and man, that ain't true. I just felt like I didn't want to hang out. So now I get in my feelings, and I ain't gonna go talk to them because they always gonna dog Kiwani out. And so you have to you have to walk on eggshells. You have to be sensitive to be there, and if the opportunity presents itself, and it's how you present everything. Hey man, did you ever notice all of a sudden you stop coming out with the fellas? What's going on? Is that okay? You don't have the money? What's happening? Maybe we could talk about it. And they may open up and talk about it. I may say, you know, I didn't notice I was not hanging out with y'all as much. I didn't notice I started changing this about. I didn't notice that because I was so much in love. I didn't pay attention. And so sometimes it's not always what we say, it's the approach we use and how we say it.
I agree. I agree. Well, I honestly believe that when you talk about abuse, there are so many directions that the conversation can go because there are so many types of abuse or ways that people are abused. So, of course, we would never cover it all in one segment. We may have to do a part two.
That's abuse. I'm not doing it.
Okay, anyway, we might have to do a part two talking about abuse because we really have not even dove into what abuse really is. We kind of are just scratching the surface pretty much. But I do believe that we have to learn how to speak up. When we start to feel uncomfortable in a situation, we need to learn how to speak up. We cannot wait until it has gotten so bad that now we don't know how to handle it. I think that a lot of times people just don't speak up. They want the help, but they're afraid to speak up, or they just don't know where to go, like you said, because sometimes the people that they're communicating with have given off this spirit of being judgmental, and so they don't want to tell that person. They refuse to talk to that person, or they're just not in a circle that gives them a judge-free zone feeling. So they kind of hide things or keep it inside, and people are dying. We see it all the time. Suicide is more prevalent now. These shootings, the mass shootings, people are really going through, and I think a lot of it has to do with um, our mental state, our emotional state, and even our physical state when we're being abused. And so we'll come back and do a part two at some point where we'll go a little bit deeper into um, abuse and being abused on both ends. A person who has um, been on the end of being abused, and the person who, because some people grow up or are raised to be bullies and abusers, like you said. They don't even know that they have that characteristic. So we have to address it. We have to address that. Okay.
Yeah. My wife bought me this beautiful shirt
I
too.
did not. He is such a liar.
It's beautiful.
Anyway,
It's a Burberry.
if you if you feel that you are in an abusive situation, seek help. There is nothing wrong with seeking help. If you feel like you're uncomfortable, like something is hurting you, it may not be hurting you physically, but it could be hurting emotionally. You're holding a lot in. Mentally, you're holding a lot in because what you that will spill over into your and make you unhealthy. It starts to affect your physical body. And so we have to seek help. Don't be afraid to seek help. If you have to reach out to um, a neighbor, a friend, a coworker, your pastor, or one of the ministers at your church, a family member, just find somebody that you can confide in and get the help that you need.
You can
No
even,
person deserves to be abused.
you can
Okay?
even reach out to us. In all seriousness,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
we're not perfect. I'm not perfect, but I don't want to see none of God's children um, hurt unnecessarily. And everyone needs someone, and so everyone reach one. And if we can, we'll do whatever. I promise we'll do whatever we can to try to help. Just want to help. We may not fix the problem, but we want to help bring a solution to the problem.
Absolutely. So we are here for you. If you don't know how to reach us, you can always send a message and we will acknowledge the message and get back to you as soon as humanly possible. Okay. Good night. We love you guys and we'll see you next week for our mouth muscle with Team Murray. Mm. See, I be forgetting how to, I don't be wanting them to see me reaching